Awesome. All right. So yeah, Drew, thanks for having me. So my name is Blake. When I'm not in a wood shop making Hollywood props, I am kind of tinkering around in a digital wood shop, Cinema 4D. So this will be your part 2 to 3D if you saw Allison's talk yesterday. I plan to have time for questions, but if anything runs short, I'm Blake Catherine on everything, so feel free to bother me there. And yeah. So a little background on me. I'm a born and raised Floridian. We're a wonderfully weird state, and we do have a ton of beautiful things too. Really exotic mosquitoes, flamingos, shag carpet. Growing up in Florida, I wouldn't say that I had a creative path by any means. That was definitely something that came to me way later in life. I was really into Lisa Frank and Nintendo and gel pens, and that was pretty much the extent of anything creative in my upbringing. I fell into graphic design actually just by taking an easy elective my senior year of high school, and fast forwarded 5 years into graduating from the University of Florida. So I knew pretty much off the backbone I didn't want to stay in Florida. It's great, but it's kind of a very hippie culture, retirement culture, as people have probably heard through the grapevine. So I landed an internship at Macy's and decided to go to the Big Apple, and figured in that very New York mindset, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. So over the course of my 2.5 years in New York, I realized really, really quick that I just wasn't meant for a traditional, or what I viewed as a traditional career path, which is you do design or something technical, you become an art director, you become a creative director, and that's kind of what I had viewed as what I should be doing in the first place. I realized the managerial elements just weren't for me, and on top of that, I had kind of fallen into 2D design. I had never done illustration until actually working at Macy's. So I left Macy's around 2 years into working there. I was an art director role, and I started doing contract illustration work. And shortly after that, a opportunity came up just randomly to relocate to LA. So I figured, why not? I can always, once again, move back if I don't like it. And the entrepreneurial spirit of LA is amazing. I really don't think I would have stayed freelance had I not actually moved to a city that was a little more affordable, but also had just still that same level of ambition and hard work, and also a great creative community. So this is an example of the stuff I did. A little bit of Macy's stuff. I got to art direct a photo shoot with this amazing photographer, Liz Von Hohn. On top of that, as an intern, I got to get a gift card design pumped out, which is like so satisfying when your professors in college are like, you're never gonna see your work produced, at least for the first couple of years. Back at you. On top of that though, everything I've gotten work-wise has been totally through social media. So all of this was dribble work. Even the Macy's internship when I landed in the first place was because I had a decent dribble presence, which was like crazy low. They just had low standards. So the big break for me, I guess, as a freelancer was between moving to New York and LA last summer, when some of the guys at Sunrise, it's a calendar app, if any of you guys have used it, were acquired by Microsoft Outlook. And I had become pretty good friends with Jeremy, who's the creative director at Sunrise and one of the founders. And he kind of just wanted to sexy up the Outlook brand. So it was like really awesome. We got to take all of the beautiful creative elements that Sunrise had as an app and kind of made t-shirts, we made office signage, business cards. Like it was just a really dope opportunity, and with such a team that was like so open to kind of being innovative. But even with these kind of more fortunate situations, having really fun clients, forward-thinking individuals and all that, I just felt super stuck. I was getting way less inspired. Now that I was a full-time freelancer, I wasn't really seeking out additional passion projects or work by any means. And so I decided I needed to take a step back and kind of figure out how to feed my soul a bit and kind of reinvigorate the creative juices that had dried up over time. So around this time, conveniently, I fell into finding out who El Luna was. I'm pretty good at hearing about things late. And decided I would go ahead and do the 100-Day Project. It was a couple weeks out, and I was like, hey, that's enough time to figure out something. So my goal for the 100-Day Project was to do anything that was not flat design. And I decided Cinema 4D from all the people I liked on Behance, from some really cool illustrators on Dribbble, seems like a really accessible program. And so also what was great, since it's so technical and tutorials can be really overwhelming, is 36 Days of Type started the following day. So I was able to kind of have this constraint for the first month of this project to actually just learn the program and to kind of play around knowing that my final thing would be a very achievable letter form. From there, I kind of slowly started finding a style. I was super inspired by LA's color palettes of like pastels and all that good jazz. And I kind of just slowly started to hone in on just really funky layouts and kind of being really refreshed at the end of every day. A lot of people have a ritual of having a coffee in the morning. For me, my evening was watching TV and like whipping up something in 3D. And it was a really awesome, just creative refresher. So near the end of this, again, kind of new to freelance, I realized that I was just not moving. I was like solid 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, sitting at a desk because my new favorite hobby was about as active as what I do for a living, which is sitting in a chair and plugging away. So I decided that I needed to figure out how to integrate these two. I was getting really solid client work for all my 2D illustrations, but absolutely zero for anything 3D based. So as Grayscale Gorilla, who is an amazing tutorial and learning platform for Cinema 4D people, they do a podcast. And one of the guys, Nick, said, I've never regretted following my obsession as hard as I can. And coincidentally, he was talking about pinball, not Cinema 4D at all. He's really big into pinball. So I figured, you know what, screw it. I'll be a little unhealthy and I won't move much for a few months, but I'm going to figure out how to make this kind of work for me. So since end of January, I've been able to get 9 clients for 3D, which has been awesome. Like for growth-wise, at least, it takes so much more time to do 3D, and it's been really rewarding to see that if you plug away at it, you can see it. So it's just a really quick overview of kind of some of the projects in the works and out the door. I do not have any mentors. So since I move around a lot and I don't have any mentors, I decided that I'd do the next best thing. 100-day project and 36 Days of Type were totally Instagram-based. And I kind of, through that, found communities and found creative collectives that I really admired and who also had really strong following and high engagement. And was like, okay, yeah, let's figure out what they're doing, right? Take notes, apply it to myself. These people are way better at it than me. But I was able to definitely take some notes and see a really awesome follower growth. I think December I was at like just over 1,000. Now I'm about 7.5 thousand followers. And then right in between the middle of that, a couple friends of mine were like, hey, once you hit 4, it's like some weird magical number and you get client work. And like magic, I hit 4 and client work just streamed in. So one of these tips was when, much like a portfolio where you kind of oogle over at what thumbnail to use and all of that, your first 9 images should give a really solid sense of who you are. So it's kind of a bit of methodical process and like, hey, how do, I kind of build this who I am, this personality in a visual manner where people also want to come and visit again. I still wasn't getting client work doing this and was making like some good friends and kind of like some awesome colleagues, was doing some side stuff for some like free publications. But again, that doesn't pay the bills, so it wasn't working. So I got one opportunity in December to do an Instagram takeover. And no compensation, no nothing, but they were like, you can do whatever you want. So I was like, sure. And from there, I decided I'd do kind of like 3, or I guess 6, 5 mini-series with kind of inspiring artists that had kind of were the reason I dived into the program in the first place, snuck in between. And the cross-pollination between their Instagram takeover with my stuff was super successful on both ends. And what was really fortunate is that one of the pieces I made in this got unusually shared and popular, which was this happy little pineapple here. So just a little bit of, and I'll go into technical more too. This is a mix of Cinema 4D and Photoshop. You should always have a post, in my opinion, unless you are like a crazy wizard. So to get that kind of real fruit texture was scanning in a pineapple and then like an actual cut one and applying it later. And then kind of allowing all of the Cinema 4D goodness to be the actual elements that look really, really CGI. So this got shared through a couple collectives, and this was the single piece that actually got me on the board to start getting client work, which was so rewarding and also really validating because one of the guys from Major Lazer really, really wanted it. So I was like, yes, he's gonna hang that up next to his pepperoni pizza pineapple. This is great. So that was just a total creatively rejuicing thing that led to me kind of rekindling my relationship with 36 Days of Type and actually getting some 3D work to do some artistic series on a couple Type Foundries website. It helped me meet digital lab called Meet Cavell, which is fantastic. They do a lot of LA branding. They have a really cool campaign right now for education. So if you see like a really beautiful illustrated educational series in LA on billboards, that's them. They're fantastic. And it also somehow got one of the writers of Creators Project to find me and to just kind of have a chat with me. So from here, like the waterfall was really amazing. And the work I started getting was social based and was 100% through social media, much like through my 2D work on Dribbble. So this was with Cavell, where we did a game where we were trying to basically build the following and engagement of the newsstand. They're like a bodega designer shop in New York subways. They're really awesome if you're ever in New York. And so we did 8 illustrations, all 3D modeled, due in less than a week from the client brief for the Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Picture nominations. And then the goal was you would take an actual screenshot on your phone and you would repost it and you would share. And then basically the whole thing was just a brand awareness for the newsstand. The rewards were really fun as well. There was like a $100 gold donut was one of them, and like all these other little random things. A year's worth of Golden Grams. I kind of feel bad for whoever won that one. A little less cool. But so this was like the kind of work I was getting, which kind of was all in this like micro environment of just the social media realm, which was something I really hadn't expected by any means. So from there, some friends who were much smarter than me recommended, hey, you should actually start getting on Tumblr now. Like, you're doing okay on Dribbble, you're doing okay on Instagram, spread that audience. And I love them for that because Tumblr ended up being a really unusual way for me to switch up who my audience was. Before it was kind of like a lot of professionals and younger people, brands that wanted to be a little more funky. Tumblr just made me and teenagers connect. Teenagers and I are really good friends now. So I got lucky, a couple of pieces were staff picks, and the login kind of helped me kind of just exponentially grow a Tumblr audience really quick. And from there, I started realizing that my website traffic was crazy low this whole time. I had Instagram views were great and comments, Tumblr stuff and repost was going great. Dribbles, when I'm getting bad at it, I need to get back on it, usually goes well. But for my website, it was just always this secondary platform and never the reason anyone ever hired me for client work. So I started offering wallpapers and made a part of my website and actually on all my social media platforms try to get people through my website through free device wallpapers, where I'll take ones that are pretty well received and just kind of make them to all the more standard iPhone and Android sizes. And that ended up just overnight almost just started doing fantastic. I think I saw like a 300 to 500% growth in website views within the first week or so. And I know they're all there for the wallpapers, but maybe one day they'll get curious and they'll go to a different page. So now to the actual tools part, which is the fun part, I hope, for you guys. So Allison live demoed yesterday Cinema 4D. I am terrible at trackpads, so I won't attempt to do that with you guys. But I'm going to kind of go into a couple programs I use. So Cinema 4D is obviously the backbone of it all. And like a lot of complicated programs, you can, of course, kind of mix between a few. So anything hand element-wise, if you see those yellow circles, that's actually through a program called MakeHuman, which is open source, totally free. If you've ever played any of the Sims games, it's like making a sim, but like way more customizable. Like you can get weird. You can make really long toes and stuff like that. It's kind of cool. So what's great about MakeHuman too is it rigs it for you. So like I'm able to make my own little alien-looking person, open up in Cinema 4D, and all of those yellow dots are joints that I can move. And there's different ways you can go about it. I found this out like 6 months after I was already using body parts, and I was so angry it took me that long to find it. So if any of you guys are interested in it, save yourself the trouble and just start using that program. If you see like all those black kind of furry things jetting up, that is a extension/separate program that's integrated into Cinema 4D called XParticles. And what XParticles does is you basically press play, and it's going to randomly generate just emitters and emissions. So the trails layer, sorry, this is the only techie part, I promise. The trails layer makes it all kind of become like this long thing. So as the emission rises or the little emitter rises, there's actually like a trail and a line going up with it. And then from texturing standpoint, you can either do hair, you could delete the trails and they'll all just be really shiny little dots. And it's a really fun way to exponentially like just make something random. It's fantastic for it. So that ends up rendering to this. And that grass texture is actually a hair material because hair picks up light way better than grass. Who knew? And so from there, this is all just, I would say it took less than 1 hour to make. It can be really, really quick if you just know how to like make these programs work for you. And it's definitely like not a daunting field at all. So I'm gonna go into some client work just to kind of give you guys an actual like view of how you would talk to an art director if you were going through this method. I'm terrible at sketching. I think that's why icons and I got along really, really well in my earlier career path. And when you sketch an icon, it's not much mystery on what your final delivery is gonna be. When you sketch a 3D piece, there's a ton of mystery and a lot of nervous emotions in the room if you only were to send something like this. So I was working with Rob Vargas from Bloomberg Businessweek, and he wanted to, Microsoft was doing an article on Cortana, but Cortana didn't have a strong visual, so he wanted to make like a futuristic Clippy. So I sent him these with a handful of other sketches. They're all noted up. And clearly, just looking off the bat, I was stressed out for him. I was like, I wouldn't trust this. Like this, you have no way of visualizing how this is gonna look 3D unless you have a way better imagination than me. So with each project that I talk with anyone, I kind of give what's really similar and familiar a mood board. And in this case, it's kind of just showing like, hey, these are all the routes we can go. Clearly, it'll be unique to you. But it kind of eases that tension because it's not just something in the flat sphere and 2D illustration, which I was doing before. There's so many more elements to it. And for even the earlier one, the newsstand, where we did all the gold flashy stuff, we did, I mocked up 9 different types of gold so that they could make sure they loved the gold off the start. So just ways to expedite the process. In my history with illustration, both 2D and 3D, it's kind of like you're one of the last people reached out to, so the deadline's just generally shorter. So these are just ways to kind of just save yourself a crazy headache and a late night. So then we kind of a la carted the options we liked between the sketches and like the following page. And we came up with a couple random first iterations, which are already pretty polished, which is definitely a benefit of kind of giving a little more up front. We lean towards the latter two, and then with a final product of this little guy, who I think looks futuristic. Another note off what I was showing earlier is all those little white dots, that's X particles, but just without hair. It's little neon lights. So it all integrates together really well and can just save you time overall. And for this one, the deadline was less than a week. So it's another one of those things where it's always really quick, and the better way to kind of expedite your process, just go for it. And yeah, sorry, thanks.
Questions? Anybody have any questions?
And if anyone has a super technical one, I could chat your ear off later. I'm happy to go really crazy into details here.
Something along like with your story that I kind of connected with was when you were at Macy's and you were saying that it was kind of not the most creative environment. Like I did the same thing. I was at a print shop doing business cards, and it was like soul-sucking. And I remember when I left there and I started doing freelance, I was like, everything that I'm designing looks horrible. So it took me like forever to like get back into the creative like mindset of doing that. Yeah,
and it was also just, I mean, if you're not meant to manage an art director role, you're not going to be a good art director. So it was a little like, knocked down.
Yeah.
So you got a really unique visual style and voice. I was wondering if there's like a dream client out there, someone that you'd love to work with.
That's a tough one. Trying to think. I did just have a really fun project with Lazio where they sent me images of their bathing suits. And again, this was like all teen culture, so it was like really fun because I knew they'd be weird. And so I basically got to just have full creative freedom to reinterpret their bathing suits as 3D pieces. So that was like a really, really fun one. I would love to work with more fashion companies like that. I think that's why I originally worked with Macy's, is I love the kind of, though Macy's, not to diss, but I'd love to work with the more higher end versions of like fashion and just kind of get into that funky feel. Another thing is working with other musicians is fantastic. I want to tackle a music video soon.
I love how you challenged yourself with the 100-day project and the type project. Within the context of 3D, what do you think your next challenge will be?
Definitely getting into animation and VR. I was actually talking to a VR director the other day who does all footage stuff, and he was kind of telling me all the technicalities of it because he like builds his own reels and is really paranoid of like winding up on shittyreels.com or whatever. And I was like trying to figure out how to integrate 3D into that because it's such a similar build. And a lot of people do 3D for like architecture and like blueprints and stuff like that, to where it is really faking reality to an extent. So if I could figure out how to get into VR, that would be a next step for sure.